So yang ini we're gonna do together. Based on chapter 5. Okay, for chapter 5 we learn 5.1 alkene dengan 5.2 alkene. So alkene ni there's not a lot of reaction. For the alkene itself memang banyak lah reaction dia. So for your class, for the last Saturday punya class, Miss bagi video for mechanism kan. Sebenarnya again I have mentioned in the video itself. For chapter 5, your JPU kalau tak berubah lah, we do not know whether your exam will be objective ke subjective. But if it's a subjective punya question, the total marks for chapter 5 is only 7 marks. Okay, selalunya mechanism pun dah dapat 4 ataupun 5 markah. So sebab tu lah for yang 5.2 alkene ni, we will learn 3 mechanism. 3 ni pun Miss banyaknya memang bagi jawapan semua dekat kamu. Tinggal kamu salin tengok je lah. And ada certain question you have to answer in Google Form. So we have learned the mechanism tu yang ini. Chapter 5.2, mechanism this one. Mana lagi mechanism kita belajar? Hydrohalogenation ni. As well as the hydration itself. Okay. So that is actually yang 5.2 tu. Tapi ni kita akan buat sama-sama lah. Okay, so the question is actually available on Google Classroom. Sebenarnya Miss pun bagi lambat malam tadi. Tapi yang ini kita akan buat sama-sama. No worries. So this is actually chapter 5 hydrocarbon. For the next chemistry ni, sebenarnya chapter 1 until 3 je yang kamu kena guna calculator. Kita ada chapter 5 until 13 lah. Semua dah start organic dah. 4 until 13, semua organic. Dah bye-bye calculator. Tak payah guna dah calculator tu. All of it is actually organic chemistry. Okay, so this is actually the question for chapter 5 hydrocarbon. So we have 6 questions. Hopefully in 1 hour ni ataupun lebih sikit, we're going to finish up this example together. Okay, so first question here. Okay, so kita tengok dekat sini lah. First question mentioned that write the product form when 2,2-dimethyl propane reacted with chlorine under sunlight and state the type of reaction involved. Okay, so here it mentioned write the product form. So even though here it mentioned only the product, what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to write down the equation overall lah. Equation. Again, for the reaction of alkane, there's only 2 reactions, which is we only learn for the alkane is combustion and halogenation. Okay, so here we have 2,2-dimethyl propane. Sebenarnya up to you whether you want to do the skeletal ke, nak buat condense ke, nak buat expanded ke, mana-mana pun boleh juga. Bestnya, after yang organic ni, it is not specific lah macam kalau skeletal memang kena semua skeletal lah. Tapi condense and expanded actually can be combined together lah. Okay, so for the rest of the example, Miss akan buat yang condense ataupun expanded sikit. So now let's look for the example for question 1 itself. Dia kata 2,2-dimethyl propane. So propane ni, it means that we have 1, 2, 3 carbon. Okay, so when we have 3 carbon here, mention about propane. Next, they mention at 2,2-dimethyl. Okay, so it means that on carbon number 2 ni, we have 2 of our methyl. So CH3, CH3. Okay, so this is the reaction itself. Okay, tapi kalau kamu buat macam ni je, salah lah. Okay, why salah? Sebab sebenarnya, yelah, carbon ni dah cukup 4 bond. This carbon pun dah cukup 4 bond. But this carbon is not completed yet. So we have to show lah. Carbon kan sebenarnya ada berapa bond? Ada 1, 2, 3. Kat sini bond keempat dia. So on your left hand side carbon pun make sure ada 1, 2, 3, 4. So the rest tu should be filled out with what? With our hydrogen. Hydrogen, 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 hydrogen. So this is actually our 2,2-dimethyl propane. Okay, for this reaction, we need to react it with chlorine under sunlight. So when it reacted with chlorine, so we have to lah plus dengan Cl2. Okay, under sunlight ni, you have to write down dia punya UV. So, kat sini kita buatlah UV. So, dekat sini kita buat UV. Okay, this UV is very important sebab if you did not include the UV, actually this reaction cannot happen. Sebab UV ni give the energy for the formation of radical. So from radical ni barulah boleh form kita punya yang haloalkene when we substitute one of the hydrogen with our chlorine ataupun bromine. Okay, for the halogenation itself, we have to substitute the hydrogen with chlorine or bromine. Depends on the question given lah. Okay, dalam case ni is given to you chlorine. So we have to substitute one of the hydrogen with our chlorine. But which hydrogen? So we have to classify it. So we have to consider the classification yang tertiary, secondary, primary. So it means that kalau tertiary ni, kalau the tertiary will be the major one. Kalau tertiary tak ada, but the possibility ada secondary dengan primary. Okay, secondary will be the major product. Okay, so what should we do here? Kita kenalah classify kita punya carbon. Okay, kenapa nak classify carbon? Sebab the classification of hydrogen ni, it depends on the carbon itself lah. Sebab kalau primary hydrogen, it means that it attached to primary carbon. Kalau secondary hydrogen, kenapa dia secondary hydrogen? Because it attached to secondary carbon. Macam tu. Okay, so what we're gonna check here is actually kita akan check one by one classification of carbon kita. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbon. So kita tengok lah. Okay, we're gonna start with the left one. So the left one is actually primary. Only attached to it one carbon. Attached to only one carbon. We have to check lah to how many carbon it attached. Bukan pada carbon ni sebenarnya nombor berapa. It's not. So this carbon, okay, it attached to 1, 2, 3, 4. So this one is actually quaternary carbon. Okay. The output one, the above quaternary carbon, here is actually primary. Okay. Below quaternary carbon pun primary. The right hand side tu is actually primary juga. Okay. So we have quaternary as well as primary carbon. Okay. So maknanya we only have primary hydrogen. Okay, so kita nampak sini quaternary. When we're talking about the classification, we always talk about consider tertiary, secondary, primary. This case, our carbon ni quaternary. Kenapa quaternary we do not consider? Kenapa tak ada quaternary? Okay, actually, on our quaternary carbon ni, there's no hydrogen attached. Sebab carbon dah cukup 4 bond kan, so there's no hydrogen attached to it. So maknanya we cannot lah substitute. Maknanya there's no chlorine, tak boleh ada chlorine lah yang attached dekat sini. So what happen is that chlorine will be substituted with any of our primary hydrogen. Tak kisahlah yang mana-mana. Sebab again, why? Because quaternary carbon, there's no hydrogen. Okay. This reaction, we will substitute H with our Cl. Since the quaternary tak ada hydrogen, so kita boleh substitute any of our primary. Okay, so kat mana satu yang Miss nak substitute? Miss nak substitute yang primary, paling senang yang hujung sini lah. Okay, so I'm gonna do, masih lagi sama, so maknanya hydrogen, carbon, hydrogen, hydrogen. This carbon CH3, CH3. Okay, carbon hujung sekali, hydrogen, hydrogen. Here is actually Cl. Okay. So dalam kes ni memang tak ada major minor product lah. So sebenarnya boleh je dekat sini pun boleh. This hydrogen pun boleh. This hydrogen pun boleh. So all of it will be the product itself lah. Okay, if you want to write down the byproduct pun boleh. So plus HCl. Okay, so this is actually the reaction. Yang ni pelik sikit sebab tiba-tiba ada quaternary kan. Usually we only saw the tertiary dengan secondary sahaja and primary as well. Okay, but actually the question is not finished. We have another question. Dia kata kat sini, state the type of reaction involved. Okay, so type of reaction kena specific. It's either addition, elimination, substitution ataupun rearrangement. So in this case, what happened is actually we substitute lah, because we substitute our hydrogen with our halogen. And then next, because UV ni, bila kita belajar mechanism, we know that we substitute, what will happen is actually formation of radical kan. So this reaction is actually, we have to write down the type of reaction is actually free radical substitution. Free radical substitution. Okay. So this is actually for the question itself. So this is the answer for question number 1. We have to substitute it and then bagi tahulah type of reaction. Okay. So that is the question itself. So next, sebenarnya Miss nak kamu yang jawab. There's 2 question here. Sekejap. Nampak ke So bolehlah buka, besarkan lagi di the screen tu. So again dekat sini Miss nak buat poll. So start the poll. Question 1. So you have to answer lah. For this case, for the reaction, both of the reaction ada major dengan minor product. But I want you to choose which of the choices here. Contohnya here is example number 1. Example number 1 ni A ke B ke C, yang which one is the correct equation with the correct major product. The same goes for question 2. Okay, so let's discuss it together. Okay, so question number 1. Okay, question number 1. Okay, first and foremost, we have to consider the classification lah. Okay, so jawapan dia, okay, kat sini, bila kita zoom in dekat yang ni question number 1 ni. Okay, kita zoom in. When we do the classification, here is actually our primary, secondary, tertiary. Ni primary carbon, secondary, primary. So from here, the most stable one is actually kita punya yang the one with the higher class tu is actually yang tertiary ni kan. So what happen is actually we will substitute this hydrogen with our bromine. So sebab itulah this will be the product. So for question number 1, the answer is actually C. Okay, so that's actually for question number 1. Okay, for question number 2. Okay, so let's do the classification. So yang ini ada semua ni. Okay, so yang ini again the classification here is primary, here is quaternary, here is our primary carbon. This one secondary, this one is primary. So if you look based upon here, nampak macam it means that quaternary ni lah yang paling tinggi kan So this one lah yang kena substitute. But then again, we will substitute hydrogen with our chlorine dalam case ni. But quaternary ni, there's no hydrogen. Okay, so the next best thing is actually for the secondary lah. So this case is secondary ni. So we change it with the chlorine. So this one will be the answer. Okay, why not 1? Why not A? Okay, ini kan. Yang A ni, actually kalau kamu tengok, dia kat sini, ni yang Cl ni CH3 kan. Sebenarnya ni tak ada. Kalau yang ni mesti sebab dia tengok rearrangement kan. For the free radical substitution, there's no rearrangement. So kat sini mana boleh tukar. Kenapa ni tiba-tiba bertukar di sini? There's none lah, tak boleh. Even though ni kat sini nampak ni lah paling stabil ni sebab here is actually attached to the tertiary one. Tapi kenapa CH3 kat sini? That is not the same. Question B ni pun salah. Kenapa? Sebab why we cannot substitute CH3 ni with Cl? Actually, we substitute our hydrogen. The case here is actually we substitute our hydrogen with our chlorine ataupun bromine. Okay. So that is actually for question. Ni extra question lah. for the free radical substitution. Okay. Next, kita akan tengok for question number 2. Okay, so for question number 2, here it mentioned that the reaction of 2-methyl butane with bromine in the presence of UV light will yield several mono-substituted product. Mono-substituted tu maknanya only one of the hydrogen lah. Only one hydrogen will be substituted with one our chlorine ataupun one of our bromine. Next, they ask you to show the mechanism of this propagation step. So, in this case, dia nak propagation je. Okay. But then again, for what reaction is actually for our 2-methyl butane with bromine. Okay, so before we do the mechanism, first thing first, what we're going to do is actually we have to draw, ataupun we have to write down the equation. Okay, sebab for the mechanism itself, what we want is actually, okay, the mechanism ni, propagation step ni must be for the major product. Even though it does not specify to you, we have to assume lah, maknanya kita nak yang we only want the major product itself. So what should we do? We have to write down the equation. So butane. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And 2-methyl butane. So carbon number 2 we have CH3. So the next ni boleh jadi hydrogen. Make sure all the hydrogen must have apa ni nama dia 4 bond. Tambah lagi alkane kan, so we have 4 single bond lah. In the presence of bromine, so bromine this case is actually here, plus dengan bromine must be in the presence of sunlight. Kalau tak ada UV ni, even though your product is correct, tak ada UV ni salah. Must include the UV. Okay, so from here, before anything, we have to classify, start with the left hand side. This is primary, this is tertiary, this is primary, this is secondary, this is primary. Okay. So this time around, lagipun sebab the question does not mention kan kena buat equation ke tak. It's enough if only you show only the major product. Okay, so what happened here? Okay. So dekat sini, kalau ini masuk means kita boleh combine sikit condense dengan skeletal. Okay, so from here is my CH3 kan. So, Miss tulislah kat sini CH3. This is this one. I can, and then I have my tertiary carbon tu kan, tu kat tengah-tengah. In the middle here. Attach to it another CH3. Attach to it another CH3. Okay. So, kalau kita buat condense, sebenarnya sini kita punya hydrogen lah kan. But then again, what we're going to do is actually we will substitute our, apa ni, what do you call that? Our hydrogen ni with our bromine. So, delete this one. Alah, this one bromine. Again, mana satu kita substitute is this one. Yeah, substitute dengan bromine. Okay, so if you want to write down the byproduct, boleh, tak nak pun boleh juga. Plus HBr. Okay, so this is only the equation. So next what we're going to do is actually the mechanism. Okay, so for the mechanism of free radical substitution ataupun the halogenation of alkane, there are actually 3 steps. So 3 step ni, we have our initiation, propagation, termination. Initiation ni first step, lepas tu dia ada satu sahaja step dia. Propagation ni second step, there's 2 steps. Okay. So, sebab initiation tu simple saja, so I'm gonna show both lah. Misal buat untuk initiation juga. Even though the question does not ask you to. Tapi sebab initiation simple sahaja, so bolehlah kita buat. Okay, so first thing first, what we're gonna do is actually we're gonna write down the equation for initiation. So, initiation ni, initiation. Initiation is where all the reactions started. So, how does it start? It's actually, sebenarnya start dengan bromine dengan UV kita. So, what we have, bromine ni, bromine dengan bromine. Again, because remember, one bond, we have 2 electron. So, Miss memang suka buat, kalau kat sini, for the case of free radical ni, Miss memang suka buat dot-dot tu, one bond tu buat dot-dot, supaya nampak lah electron tu what happened. And then you have to include dia adanya UV. Okay. So UV ni provide heat ataupun energy to undergo homolytic cleavage. Homolytic cleavage ni where the electron will be shared equally. So bila dia shared equally, okay, you have to show arrow tu from our bond tu ataupun from our electron towards our atom. Okay, sebab kita buatlah curve arrow, lepas tu half headed. Okay, so that's one step. Okay, we have to show lah another of our bromine ni. So from there, okay, up to you. Kalau kamu nak buat atas macam ni boleh. Macam ni. Ataupun nak buat yang sebelah-sebelah nampak macam ni. Ataupun boleh juga yang ini you want to draw in terms of kat sini. Half-headed arrow. Half-headed curved arrow. Lepas tu half-headed arrow. Okay. So again, dia boleh macam ni. Ataupun nak buat arrow dia macam ni pun boleh tak? 1, 2 pun accepted. So we're gonna form 2 of our radical bromine. Radical. Dot ni is up to you nak buat atas, bawah, kanan, kiri, kiri kanan. Anyway, also can. So that is actually for initiation. Okay, next step. What the question wants is actually our propagation. So we're gonna write down propagation. We have 2 steps. Okay, so first step is actually our bromine ni dia akan kacau kita punya stable compound. In this case kita punya apa nama ni? What do you call that? This is actually our 2-methyl butane. So again, this case means nak guna yang macam condensed ni. So this one, if I make it as a condensed structure, will be like this. CH3 attached to carbon, attached to CH3, attached to another CH3, attached to hydrogen. Okay? So what happened here is actually bromine radical ni will take, dia perampas kan, it will take the hydrogen. So dekat sini, Miss memang terus tukar, dia jadi 2 electron here, 1, 2. Alamak, tak muat pula delete. Okay, so we will react it with our radical tadilah. Bromine radical. So radical tu nak buat kat mana, dot tu kat mana-mana pun boleh. So again, for this one, the arrow yang selalu orang terlupa, okay, yang ini memang ingatlah. The bromine ni will take the electron from the hydrogen. So again, dia jadi curved arrow, half-headed. So, lagi satu elektron ni pergi curve arrow half-headed. Dia kena berjumpa lah. Ada yang buat dekat plus pun boleh juga. Tapi macam make sure dekat plus tu, dia punya arrow tu meet each other lah. Katanya macam arrow tu kissing each other. Kena tunjuk. Okay. Ada kissing each other, bukan kissing the plus ni lah. So, the arrow ni must meet. Okay. So, what happen next? Jangan lupa ada satu elektron yang kena tinggal ni kan. Ada satu elektron yang sorang-sorang ni kena tunjuk yang dia pun clash juga. So, the electron go back to our carbon. So, what will happen to the product itself? Yang ni tak ada guna UV apa-apa. You just write down CH3, CH3. Sekarang ni we have our radical. Plus with our hydrogen and bromine have combined together plus HBr. So, that is actually the reaction. So that is the first propagation. Yang ni, first propagation ni we will get our byproduct HBr. Next propagation is we will take the radical from the first step, the product here. Kita akan reaction dengan bromine ni to get our major product. Okay, so what happened here? This one, so number 2, yeah.
Yang CH3 yang kanan tu bukan CH2, CH3 kah?
Mana Oh, lah. Okay, thank you. Siapa tu bagi tahu? Izzah
Welcome. Ya.
So, sini sepatutnya CH2, CH3. Miss pun confident je kan? CH2, CH3. CH2, CH3. So, sini pun jadi CH2, CH3. Sini pun jadi CH2, CH3. CH2, CH3. Okay, so sini Okay, so maknanya tadi tu mesti silap, patutnya kat sini CH2CH3 lah. Terkurang satu carbon. So tu pun Miss pun ada apa ni kan, careless mistake kan. So just to make sure. Okay, so next step kita ambil the same radical. We will react it with our bromine gas. Yang our reagent tu. So again kat sini Miss suka tunjuk satu bond tu ada 2 elektron. 1, 2. So this case apa yang dia akan ambil? Okay, yang ini nak dating kat mana pula? Dating kat sini lah pula. Okay. So curve arrow, half-headed arrow. Okay, and it will take one of the bromine as well as the electron lah. Dia akan rampas ni. One arrow, curve arrow, half-headed. So yang ini bila dah dating, dah curang. So this one saya tunjuk lah, dia split up. So dia pun split up, go to the bromine back. Okay. So the product, so from here we will get our product lah dalam case ni. CH3, C, CH3, CH2, CH3. This case, here bromine plus Br dot. So from the propagation step, we will get our byproduct as well as the major product. So that is actually the propagation step. Okay. So tu mechanism dia lah. Okay, so question 1 dengan tu kita discuss untuk alkene. The rest of the question kita akan discuss alkene. Okay, so bila kita discuss alkene, so hopefully semua dah okay dapat sini. Kita tengok, this is for question number 2. Question number 2 ni tak ada extra question, ni je mesti bagi. Okay. Next one, let's look for question number 3. Okay. Okay, question number 3. Here, start yang alkene kita. There's a lot of alkene reaction kat sini which most of the reaction have been included lah in this mind map. Dalam mind map ni mechanism je. Okay. So, kita boleh teruskan to the question number 3. It mentioned here that dehydration of 2-methyl-2-butanol will produce alkene. So, maknanya our alcohol ni will change to alkene, and then because dehydration, D ni maknanya we remove. This is the removal. Hydration kan water lah, H2O. We remove our water, will produce alkene. Okay, so here it mentioned A. Write the structures of all alkene form and give IUPAC name of the major product A. Okay, so let's do together 2-methyl-2-butanol. So 2-methyl-2-butanol, what we have is actually this one lah. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. And then carbon number 2, we have our methyl as well as our OH. Okay, so the rest tu kita akan fill up with what? The rest of it, make sure the hydrogen must have 4 bond and it is filled up with our hydrogen. Okay. So this one, the dehydration of alcohol here, what is the reagent? Even though the question does not ask you specifically what is the reagent, then when we look back on our mind map, dehydration of alcohol is this one. Ni, alcohol form our alkene. And the dehydration of alcohol, we will need concentrated H2SO4 and heat to remove our OH as well as our hydrogen. Okay, this reaction is elimination reaction which follow the 6th rule. Okay, so let's look for the question. Nanti kita akan buat extra. Kita akan tengok ada extra question juga. No worries. Kalau dah lupa dah. Reaction of alkene ni banyak sikit. Okay, so we react it with our concentrated H2SO4 and it must be in heat lah. So heat. Okay. So what happened here for the reaction? For the reaction, okay, for the dehydration, first we have to remove the OH. from the carbon that containing OH itself lah. Next, what we have to do is remove the hydrogen. Okay, when we remove the hydrogen too, we have to consider carbon that is next to the carbon containing our OH group. Again, when you consider the carbon next to it, you have to consider the classification lah. Is it primary, secondary, or tertiary? Okay, so for this question, because it mentioned here, write the structures of all alkene form. Sebab dekat sini all alkene form. So maknanya we have to write down for the major and as well as the minor product. Okay. So again, which atom or which OH, which hydrogen will be, which atom that we will remove? First one is our OH, kan? Ni first step. Next, we have to check next to it. What is the classification of the carbon next to it? Okay, so bila kita tengok dekat sini, here is actually ni carbon kita kan, carbon containing OH. Okay, sebelah dia kita tengoklah, we have to our left, we have to our right, and we have the one above it. Okay, so bila kita tengok dekat sini, here is primary, here is primary, here is actually our, apa nama ni? 1, 2, secondary. So dalam case ni, because we have two different class kan, it's enough if it's we have two product only lah. So first possibility is actually when we remove the OH and the hydrogen from secondary class. So maknanya, first kita akan remove yang mana? We're gonna remove OH. So padamlah OH ni. Tak nak pula padam. Okay, and then we remove the hydrogen from our secondary lah. So we remove this. Okay. Okay, so sekarang ni kalau kita tengok carbon kita only have 1, 2, 3 bonds. Sebenarnya dekat sini it will form our double bond kita lah. So this will be the double bond. Okay, so this is our major product. So label lah major product. Okay, but since they ask you to write the structures of all, so we also gonna remove. Sebenarnya sebabkan dekat sini this one and this one will be the same. Kalau kamu remove, once you name the structure itself, will be the same alkene. So sebab itulah, for here I'm going to show when I remove one of the hydrogen here. Okay, so dekat sini kita ada form lagi satu produk. So letak muat kat sini, buat class. Maknanya kalau kamu buat equation in one line je lah. Ini sebab tak cukup. Okay, so again, which atom that we will remove? First is the OH. Okay, next is actually the hydrogen from our primary. So we remove lah this part. So what we're gonna add next is where the carbon lose the atom, we're gonna add it our double bond. So that will be our minor product. Minor product. Okay. So again, for the dehydration ni, still masih lagi kita akan go back to our chapter 4 awal-awal tu yang we have to consider the classification. Okay, jangan lupa last one, we have to give the IUPAC name. So dekat sini, we have to give IUPAC name. So IUPAC name for the major product. So, kita tulis je lah dekat sini kan, major product. What is the name for the major product itself? Okay, kita tengok. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 carbon. The longest chain is 4. So we have to write down, maknanya the parent name will be butene. Okay. Tapi butene tu ada double bond pada carbon number berapa? Sebab when we come back, it's actually carbon number 1, carbon number 2, carbon number 3, carbon number 4. Okay, so it means that the structure is 2 butene. However, in this case, not only we have 2 butene, we have another carbon. Here, CH3. So the name here would be, and then the substituent ni, the CH3 is actually on carbon number 2. So we have to write down the product is, the name of the major product is 2-methyl 2-butene. So that is for the dehydration. Again, we're going to remove dehydration, we remove the OH as well as the H. Hence, we will combine it, maknanya remove water lah, H2O. So that is actually for the question number 3. Okay, so again dekat sini kita buat, kat sini ada extra question. Okay. So here we have extra question 3 dengan question 4. We'll check lah. Yang ini, so we have done the dehydration of alcohol. This case around, this is actually a skeletal structure. For skeletal structure, the hydrogen is not shown kan. So make sure determine the classification tu yang carbon next to it. Yang ini kita tak ada tengok di arrangement ke apa. Ada question 3, question 4. We have to consider lah. Each of the carbon must have 4 bond. So mana yang carbon tak cukup 4 bond tu maknanya adalah hidden hydrogen to it. Maksudnya dekat sini kan, this carbon. Macam kat sini. This carbon. Kita nampak ada 1, 2 bond. So it means carbon is 4 bond. So maknanya ada lagi 1, 2 hydrogen. Okay. So please consider it. Which one is the correct equation? Okay, so let's do it together lah. Dah 50 vote So question number 3, ada 33 votes for A, 18 votes for B. Okay, so what should we do? Okay, so kita tengok lah. What is the classification of the product itself? Okay, so dekat sini, when we do the product, we check the classification. Okay, first thing first, we remove the carbon OH, right? So, first kita check, kita nak remove yang carbon OH tu. So, we have to check the carbon that next to it lah. It's either this carbon or this carbon. This carbon attached to it, 1, 2. So, this one is actually our secondary carbon. Okay, secondary carbon. So, dekat sini, carbon on the right hand side here, this carbon attached to 1, 2, 3. So, this is actually our tertiary carbon. So it means that on tertiary carbon ni sebenarnya ada lagi satu hydrogen. This one we got lagi 2 kan. Okay. So the major product, again we have to consider yang tertiary more stable, secondary more stable, primary lah. Okay, so this case, major product when we remove the OH as well as the H on the tertiary. So this one, this is the answer. For question number 3, the answer is A. So you have to consider, so bila kita remove hydrogen sini, so ni lah yang jadi kita punya major product kita. This one. Here is the major product. So that is for question number 3. So kita tengok question number 4. Okay. Question number 4, again what we're going to remove is we remove the OH here and remove, next we have to remove the hydrogen from the carbon next. Okay, this carbon on the right hand side here is actually primary. So this carbon is only attached to 1 kan. Okay, this carbon attached to it 1, 2, 3. So ada, this is actually our tertiary carbon. Okay, again just yang ini tak perlu pun tunjuk hydrogen ni. Just to show it to you, carbon needs 4 bond. So maknanya kat sini ada satu hydrogen lagi. Sebenarnya this one ada 1, another 1, 2, 3. Barulah cukup carbon 1, 2, 3, 4 bond. Is we have included the hydrogen 1, 2, 3, 4 bond. Okay. So again, this case sebab this one is actually our tertiary carbon. This one is primary. So when we remove the hydrogen from our tertiary, this one will be our major product. This one. Question number 4 ni pun jawapan dia adalah A. Okay. So kat sini lah. So again, you have to check for the classification tu lah. Carbon next to it tu. Memang kanan dengan kiri dia. Sebab kalau if it does not ask you for the mechanism, tak adalah rearrangement. Tapi yang ini dia quite straightforward. So that is actually the question for the dehydration. Dehydration ni will follow the Say's rule. Okay. So next question kita tengok the same question 3. Tapi this case kita tengok question 3B. So we do get our product is actually tadi 2-methyl-2-butene, which is this one. Here mentioned that it undergoes electrophilic addition with hydrogen bromide and state the rule used to determine the product. Okay, so hydrogen bromide. So what is hydrogen bromide? Hydrogen bromide is HBr. So pluskan dengan HBr. HB. Okay, so what is the product itself? Okay, so for the electrophilic addition, okay, selalunya kan kita dah belajar yang substitution dengan elimination ada major dengan minor kan. This one pun sebenarnya ada juga tapi for our syllabus tak ada consider major minor. Electrophilic addition, no major minor. Kita just follow the rule that for the alkene we have to consider which carbon has more or less hydrogen. Kita tengok balik mind map kita. For the electrophilic addition, actually it will follow here. Markov-Nikov rule. Markov-Nikov rule mentioned that the electrophile will add to the carbon-carbon with more hydrogen. So when it adds to the carbon-carbon more hydrogen, sebenarnya he nak senang, most of our example, especially kalau we added two different atom, mostly ada hydrogen lah. That's why it will be easier for you to remember. Hydrogen mesti suka dekat carbon yang banyak hydrogen. Dia nak cari partner dia, nak cari gang dia. Okay. So sebab itulah for the electrophilic addition, the most important part, besides we have to know which atom is added, we have to consider which carbon has more or less hydrogen. Where the hydrogen will be added to the one with more hydrogen. Okay, so macam mana nak tengok? Kita kena fokuskan to the one with the carbon-carbon double bond kita lah. Okay. So here is our carbon-carbon double bond. Okay, so sekarang ni, if this structure is not clear enough to you, it's okay. Kita buat yang condense sekejap. So maknanya carbon-carbon double bond kita, here attached to CH3, here it attached to another CH3. This one attached to hydrogen, here attached to CH3. Betul tak? Aku terlepas. Okay. So if we are unsure tak nampak lah more or less hydrogen ni miss, it's fine. Do the condense structure macam ni. So you can see carbon tu bonded to how many hydrogen. Okay. So based upon here, I hope it's a bit clearer to you. Okay, this carbon, it does not attach to any hydrogen. It attached to CH3. Sebab sebenarnya dekat sini, carbon ni attached pada carbon kan. This carbon yang contain this hydrogen. So this carbon actually has no hydrogen. So maknanya sini no hydrogen. So mesti dekat sini lah, no hydrogen. For this carbon, yang ini clear lagi, we can see attached to it one hydrogen and one CH3. So senang kat sini kita tulis lah, here we have one hydrogen. So in this case, which one yang has the carbon that has more hydrogen is this one. So kita nak yang carbon yang inilah. Ni yang banyak hydrogen. Okay. So what should be added to this structure? So maknanya structure ni, okay. What happen next is actually addition ni kita akan remove the double bond. Okay, so kita padam sekejap. Okay, kita remove the double bond. So we're going to make two new bonds. So kita buka lah. Satu bond baru dekat sini. Satu bond baru dekat sini. Okay. Yang ni lah. Double bond tadi tu remove. Dapat two double bond. Tambah two single bond. Because remember carbon needs 4 bond. Lepas tu dekat sini, this carbon. Dalam kes ni we have HBr. So we're gonna add one hydrogen, one bromine. Okay. And based on the Markov-Nikov rule tu, senang nak ingat, hydrogen, it would like to be added to the carbon with more hydrogen. So maknanya HBr tu, kat mana banyak hydrogen, this one. Sini yang hydrogen. So this one will be our bromine. Okay. So that is the solution. Tapi belum lagi habis soalan ni. The question wants to state the rule used to determine the product. Okay, so for this reaction, it will follow Markov-Nikov rule. Nama reaction lain, Markov-Nikov rule. So kalau addition dia Markov-Nikov, kalau apa nama ni? Kalau elimination dia adalah Say's rule. So that is actually for the reaction. Okay, ini kita akan tengok lah electrophilic addition. Okay, why electrophilic addition? Addition tu because from our double bond jadi 2 single bond, so addition lah. Electrophilic addition because kat sini adalah nucleophilic side. Kita sebenarnya nak tambah electrophile lagi lah sebenarnya. Okay, so that is the solution for question number 3. So we have another 3 more questions. Sempat-sempat. Okay. Okay, question number 4. Okay, question number 4 here. Yang ni pun pilihan juga. Okay. Here it mention, write the equation for the reaction of 2-methyl pentene. Betul tak 2-methyl pentene ni? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2-methyl pentene. Alamak, double bond dia tersilap. Tukarlah dekat sini. Sebenarnya ni 2-methyl 2 pentene. Tukarlah. Ni 2-methyl 2 pentene. Okay. 2-methyl 2 pentene with the following reagent respectively. Okay, betul kan dia 2-methyl dalam kes ni 2-methyl 2 pentene. Mas malas nak padam, so kita tukar nama lah. 2-methyl 2 pentene. So 2-methyl 2 pentene 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So carbon number 2 adanya methyl, and starting from carbon number 2 we have our double bond. Okay, so the first reaction is actually the reaction with acidified water. Okay, so tadi kita dah belajar sikit kan pasal yang electrophilic addition. So question yang ini sebab question 4A kecil ni. 4A kecil. So choose which one is the correct answer. Apa yang beza dia ni? Tengoklah sendiri. Nanti kita discuss. Okay, launch. So again, please refer to your activities. Lepas tu tengok dekat poll tu lah. Which of the equation is the correct equation for the reaction of 2-methyl 2 pentene with our acidified water? Question number 4. 3 lah. Okay, so let's discuss it together. Okay, so from here, again, this is actually electrophilic addition reaction. Okay, so for the electrophilic addition reaction, mostly it will follow Markov-Nikov rule. So for the Markov-Nikov rule, electrophile will be added to the carbon with more H. In the case of acidified water, we're gonna add H dengan OH lah. Maknanya kita add, we will add our water itself. So in this case, hydrogen ni carbon more is the one with the carbon with more hydrogen. OH is the one carbon with less hydrogen. Okay, so in this case, when we do the structure as a condensed one, so we know that this carbon here, carbon yang double bond on your right hand side ni yang has more hydrogen. This one has less hydrogen. Okay, so it means that when we add two new single bond, we will add hydrogen on this side, on this one. We're gonna add hydrogen to the carbon here. So it means that the OH will be added to here lah. Okay, so here again, this one is the H, this one is OH. Okay. Based upon the answer, there are two correct answer lah sebab dekat sini lah kan. Yang ini macam betul. This one is correct, maknanya hydrogen is added to the carbon with more hydrogen. B betul, question D pun betul juga. Okay. So what is actually the difference between B dengan D ni? Okay, so it means that question A and question D ni memang, question A and question C memang dah salah lah. Because the hydrogen must be added to the carbon with more hydrogen. So B dengan D is a possibility. So what is actually the difference? Okay. So for the case of acidified water, if you look back on your notes, it's actually bukannya acid tu act as your catalyst. Okay. So sebab tu lah kita akan buat H3O plus tu di sini. So H2O tu is actually our reagent lah. Okay, sebab tu lah the answer is D. Because the correct one, dia punya equation ni, H2O dengan H3O+. So that is for the reaction for acidified water. Okay, next question what we're going to look at is actually chlorine water. Okay, so chlorine water ni mana pula? Okay, so actually for the case of electrophilic addition, when we're adding the reaction with halogen, ada 3 different cases. Okay, so kalau kita tengok dekat my map tu, maknanya bila kita nampak ada halogen is this one. Yang halogenation ni, formation of halohydrine dengan hydrohalogenation. It means that one of the atom added tu mesti chlorine. Okay. So, from here, just Miss dah simplify kat dia, kat kamu lah. Contohnya kalau case yang chlorine So, contohnya chlorine in inert solvent. So, what we're gonna add? We're gonna add 2 of my chlorine atom. So, bila we add 2 identical atom, ni senang sikit. There's no worries of you to determine which one has more, which one has less hydrogen. Tapi for the Cl, chlorine dengan H2O, we're gonna add from chlorine, we're gonna add chlorine atom. From H2O, we're gonna add OH atom. Okay, so the last one is HCl. Kalau HCl ni straightforward sahaja. We're gonna add 1 hydrogen, 1 Cl. So yang ini pun senang sikit sebab bila kita ingat balik yang Markovnikov electrophile usually sebab ada certain, if you google the Markovnikov ni, dia bukan kata electrophile add to the carbon with more hydrogen. It mentioned that the hydrogen tu yang kena add sebab dia memang most of the reaction that we're going to look at the electrophile is hydrogen itself lah. But for the chlorine and water ni, question B ni, the reaction dia, apa ni, what we're going to add is actually chlorine dengan OH. So there's no of my hydrogen tu tak ada. So we can't use this one. Kan? Tak boleh lah guna yang hydrogen ni. So in this case, our chlorine ataupun our bromine ni will be added to the carbon with more hydrogen. OH ni will be added to the carbon with less hydrogen. Okay, so this reaction, how to write down the equation itself? So we're gonna write down the equation to be, so maknanya kat sini, plus Cl2, and then we're gonna add H2O, chlorine and H2O. So again, what is the product? Chlorine or the bromine must be added to the carbon with more hydrogen. So tadi kita dah determine dah which one yang has more hydrogen. The one that has more hydrogen is this one. Yang ni So maknanya from this side, what we're gonna add 2 new bond. So 2 new bond ni, so kat sini kita add 1, 2. Okay. But then we're gonna add the chlorine or the bromine to the carbon with more hydrogen. So this one will be added kita punya chlorine. So another one, what we're gonna add our OH. So chlorine water ni dia lain sikit lah. So here we're gonna add our OH. Dia tricky part sikit sebab in this case, bila chlorine ataupun our halogen tu, in this case our halogen is actually our electrophile. Okay. So that is actually our electrophilic addition, the second question. So this will be the solution lah. Yang ni soalan tricky sikit. Yang this equation is also, you have seen it actually during your chemical test pun ada ni jugalah, bromine test. So that is for question B. For B. Okay, untuk 4C, okay, kita back to the question again. Ni nampak panjangnya dia punya reagent ni, miss. Here, HBr in the presence of CH3OOCH3, dimethyl ether. Ya ke tu nama dia? Tak ingat lah. Okay, so this is actually the reaction lah. So, what is the difference? Kenapa adanya CH3OOCH3 ni? So, when we're talking HBr in the presence of our reagent ni, sebenarnya this is actually, it follows the anti-Markovnikov rule. So, bila kita tengok balik nota kita yang mind map tu, so waktu kat sini, Miss ada mention, for the anti-Markovnikov rule, it must be, alamak kat sini tak write down must be HBr. It's not only HBr. HBr tu must include as well, it's either H2O2 ataupun dimethyl ether kita lah, CH3OOCH3. So that is actually the answer. Maksud dia kat sini, soalan tu dia bagi tahu ada yang ini kan. So we know that it will follow the anti-Markovnikov rule. It is only applicable bila HBr, so it must have either hydrogen peroxide ataupun dimethyl ether ni. Okay, in this case, anti-Markovnikov, usually we talk about hydrogen yang kena add to the one with more hydrogen. Itu kalau Markovnikov. If anti-Markovnikov, hydrogen ni will be added to the carbon with less hydrogen. Dia terbalik sikit. Okay, so again, for the kat sini Mr. mention, yang inilah, kamu bolehlah salin kat mana, kat nota kamu ke mana. Okay. This is only applicable for HBr, HCl is not applicable. If the HBr, the reagent hydrogen bromide sahaja. Our example number 3 tu is only hydrogen bromide, so it will follow the Markovnikov rule lah. Okay. If the hydrogen bromide included the H2O2, so it will follow anti-Markovnikov rule. Okay, contohnya kalau ada HBr2 with our dimethyl ether, itu pun follow anti-Markovnikov rule, where in this case, hydrogen will be added to the carbon with less hydrogen, bromine will be added to the carbon with more hydrogen. Dia dah terbalik sikit. Okay. Okay, so dekat sini, that is the, so maknanya from here, we have to write down lah, what is the equation. So just now, our question is actually 2-methyl-2-pentene react with HBr in the presence of our dimethyl ether. So how to write down the equation? So we write down plus HBr here, HBr. Lepas tu bila kita write down our arrow tu, we have to include our reagent kita ni lah, CH3OOCH3. Okay. Okay, so again, previously we have determined this carbon is the one with more hydrogen. This case around, it follows anti-Markovnikov rule. So for the anti-Markovnikov rule, what we're gonna take ataupun apa yang kita akan add, still hydrogen dengan bromine, but dia punya rule tu berbeza, where the hydrogen will be added to the carbon with less hydrogen. Bromine will be added to the carbon with more hydrogen. So again, I have determined the one that I have highlighted to be the one that is more hydrogen. So remove D here. Remove the double bond. We're going to add 2 new bond. Okay, bromine ni carbon with more hydrogen. So here is my bromine. So the next one will be my hydrogen. So this one, it follows the anti-Markovnikov rule. Okay, so for the electrophilic addition reaction, most of the reaction, dia ada electrophilic addition, there are 6 lah addition sebenarnya kita belajar. Ada yang first yang we add hydrogen tu senang saja. We add if 2 identical atom. Hopefully yang ni kamu dah salin. Tengok balik yang ni. Balik. Okay. Addition tu kita belajar yang ni ha. Bila we add hydrogen sahaja, senang. 2 identical tu tak kisah pun. Which one has more, which one has less hydrogen. Okay. Next is halogenation in inert solvent. Inert solvent tu pun add identical atom lah. Okay, yang formation of halohydrin ni, dia ada tricky bit sikit because we add bromine dengan OH. Ni pun sebenarnya halogenation kah ataupun hydrohalogenation where we add our hydrogen as well as our halogen. Okay, and then we have our hydration. So this is actually where we learn our electrophilic addition lah, which follows the Markovnikov rule. Tapi there's only one anti-Markovnikov, only applicable for HBr as well. It must be in a peroxide condition lah. So it's either that one ataupun dimethyl ether. Okay, so that is actually question number 4. Next question number 5. Kita buat question number 6 dulu lah, baru kita buat question number 5. Okay, sebab question number 6 ni tak ada soalan yang discuss lagi, mostly pasal chemical test je. Okay, about the chemical test, it's very important because actually once you have learned all the chemical, all the organic compound, dia suka juga tanya how to differentiate these 2 molecules. Okay. So because sometimes in the laboratory itself, it is given to you 2 solutions. it seems like identical solution. So how to determine which one is the alkane, which one is the alkene, which one is the alcohol, which one is the alkene. So how to determine the test? Because from the solution we cannot know. We can't know it from the solution itself. So sebab itulah sometimes we have to do the chemical test. Okay, so here I mentioned that for question number 6, kalau sempat, kalau dalam 10 minit lagi ada masa, kita buat question number 5. Question number 5 tu straightforward je. Yang ni nak buat juga. Okay, question number 6. Here, suggest a chemical test to differentiate between 2-methyl butane and 2-methyl 1-butane. Okay, betul tak Miss punya ni? Ya, betul lah. Okay, so write the chemical equation and observation involved. Okay, so for chemical test, kita akan tengok lah. Chemical test actually we have learned ada 3. In this case, I'm going to do only 2 tests. Okay, so which of the tests that we have learned? Sebenarnya kita tengok dekat sini. Okay, kita punya mind map ni. Chemical test. First, we have learned about the Bayer test. Bayer test ni adalah purple color decolorized. Okay, so for the Bayer test, what is actually the reagent? It's actually KMnO4OH minus coal. The name of the test is Bayer test. What happened is that this is actually macam electrophilic addition. We're gonna add 2 identical OH. So this is what we call diol. Diol ni because we have 2 of our alcohol group lah. Okay. So first test. This is actually a reaction for our, this is only applicable for alkene lah. Okay, so first when we look back to the examples itself, first one ni adalah 2-methyl butane. Okay, so, tapi kalau kita tahu, kalau alkene we're gonna add 2 identical atom tu kan. Tapi macam mana pula reaction ni kalau it react with our alkane. So dalam case ni, what I'm gonna add, so it means that we're gonna add, we have to write down plus KMnO4 and then we have to write down OH minus coal. This is actually a Bayer test. Bayer test KMnO4OH minus coal. Kalau oxidation KMnO4 KMnO4H plus C. So different to oxidation. This is actually for our Bayer test. Okay, lupa pula. The chemical test here, we have to write down the name is Bayer test. Okay, so we know that for the reaction, what we're gonna do is actually we're gonna add 2 of our OH kan in the reaction. Tapi, that is for the alkene. For the alkene, how about the reaction? Because for the alkene reaction, we only learn about combustion and halogenation. Okay. So, how about the reaction? Sebenarnya this reaction cannot occur lah because we do not have any double bond untuk add atom kita. However, how to answer this? Kamu tak boleh tulis no reaction. You have to answer no observable changes. Okay. So, even though it's an equation for the alkenes, but again, when we add Bayer test, we're going to add diol. We're going to add 2 of our OH group. But we can't do it. So, what happened, this reaction cannot occur. Tapi kita tak boleh tulis no reaction. We have to write down no observable changes. Ataupun we cannot just leave it empty lah. We have to write down no observable changes. Okay, the question did ask for the observation as well. So, for the observation pun sama juga. No observable changes. Lama, muat tak ni? Okay, observation dia, no observable changes. Senangnya reaction alkene. Okay. Again, this is only applicable for alkene. But, how about alkene? Okay, alkene ni yang kita sebenarnya boleh add the atom itself lah. So, we're gonna add 2 of our OH. So, which one we're gonna add it? So, maknanya from our alkene itself. Okay. From our alkene, we're gonna remove the double bond. We're gonna add both of our OH. So, kita tulislah dekat sini. This one will be our OH and OH. So, here buatlah. Sini OH, sini OH. But we have to write down as well, dia adanya MnO2. Lama ni nak buat ni lah. NH2OH. This reaction Bayer test is formation of diol. This is what we call diol. Okay, so how about the observation? For this observation, you have to write down lah. What is the observation? MnO2 ni is actually a precipitate, so you have to write down downwards arrow. Okay, so for the observation, so what should we write down? So we have to write down, first is that the purple solution decolorize. Decolorize tu ataupun boleh juga you can write down that it turns colorless. Decolorize ataupun turn colorless lah. The purple solution turn colorless. Besides that, at the bottom of our test tube tu, we will form brown precipitate. Brown precipitate forms. Okay. So that is actually the solution. Okay. So for a chemical test, even though contohnya this is what we call positive lah. Positive tu maksud dia macam when we react it, when we add it with another reagent, ada perubahan berlaku. This is what we call a negative test. Sometimes question kata, when this reagent undergoes Bayer test, it turns negative. So even it turns negative tu maksudnya no observable changes. Okay. So for the chemical test, even though it does not ask you to write down all the possible chemical tests, tapi kat sini Miss nak tunjuk dua lah. Because for the chemical test, what we have learned is actually two. We have our bromine. We have three, but Bayer test, bromine in, what do you call that? Inert solvent, and bromine in water. Okay, kalau Bayer test ni, we're gonna add 2OH. For this one, bromine in reddish brown color decolorized ni, is actually we're gonna add 2 of our bromine. And yellowish brown color decolorized ni, we're gonna add 1 OH, 1 bromine. Okay, so another one yang lebih straightforward, kami suka kalau guna bromine test lah. Okay, ni yang last one lah. Example 5 tu, dia quite straightforward, it's fine. Okay, so again, this reaction only occur for an alkene. So this reaction, for the chemical test, we call it as bromine test. Okay. Tapi dalam case ni, we won't use KMnO4OH minus cold. We will use Br2 in our CH2Cl2 in our inert solvent. Sebab yang ini, if you add yang H2O tu, we have to consider which one carbon more hydrogen dengan carbon less hydrogen. It will be easier for you to write down Bayer ataupun bromine test. Okay. So again, for the alkene itself, there are no observable changes. So when there are no observable changes, ini Miss cut je lah. Okay, no observable changes. Okay, so that is for the reaction here. For the alkane, make sure you have to write down here lah. It is not accepted kalau kamu buat no reaction. No reaction. You have to show tak nampak apa-apa pun. Solution tu sama sahaja. Kat sini colour dia purple kan. At the start purple, at the end pun purple juga. Okay, next for our alkene. Again, we're gonna react it with our bromine and CH2Cl2. So what happened here is that we will react this alkene. What we're gonna do is actually we're gonna remove the double bond. We're gonna add both of our bromine. So add lah bromine sini, bromine sini. Okay. So this is actually the equation. How about the observation? The observation here is actually the reddish brown solution. Reddish brown. Tapi sebenarnya colour lain taklah. Buat colour merah untuk pen ya. The reddish brown solution turn colorless. So that is actually for the chemical test. Okay, so sebenarnya chemical test ni yang the one setakat ni we only learn 3 kan. Nanti once we have it now, sebenarnya banyak chemical test nanti when we learn about carbonyl compound tu banyak dia ni chemical test. Okay, so this is actually the solution lah. Okay. Apa ada 10 minit lagi tapi okay. Itulah. So this is actually the question, the solution for question number 6. Sorry. So I hope even though memang from organic ni memang you have to do lots of exercises lah sebenarnya, ataupun sebenarnya kamu kena rajin, you have to look at it every day, especially the mind map, because memang reaction dia banyak and you have to memorize. I believe it's fine for you sebab kamu dah belajar bio kan. Bio pun banyak memorizing. The same for organic. Kalau organic chemistry ni memang banyak you have to memorize lah. You have to memorize what is the reagent, what is the what is the observation for this reaction. Lepas tu what happened to the product. Tapi no worries, sebab kalau kita online je, means boleh laju. Bila boleh laju, bolehlah kita do lots of revision together. For organic ni banyaklah soalan kita boleh buat together lah. Okay. So ada question 5 tu Miss tak buat. So yang itu you can try yourself. Question number 5 ni straightforward sahaja. Sangat straightforward. And then question 5 ni, dia bagi kamu 2 metabutene. So ni dilute KMnO4 OH minus coal is actually your reagent for beer test. This is the reagent for ozonolysis. Okay. So that is the solution. I believe that's it. Nanti misalkan upload juga these notes on the Google Classroom itself. Okay, again, if you have any question, you can ask me. Tomorrow we're gonna learn a new chapter lah. Tomorrow we're gonna learn chapter 6, benzene.